Hi, I'm Rebecca Ruth, and welcome to Designing with Intention. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is my Designing with Intention series with Rebecca Ruth, and today we have AlexandraYeaggy from Yeaggy Bridal and Yeaggy Official, and she has such beautiful bridal lines, and as well as now a new luxury leisure line. So I'm so excited to talk to you today. Before we jump into all the interview questions and go through your kind of life story, if you will, let's do some quick background things. Like, who are some of your favorite fashion designers?
Oh, well, hands down top favorite is Valentino Garavani, and his life partner Giancarlo Giammetti. They are like everything for me. I think the reason why he's the biggest inspiration to me is because he also is a tailor himself, and I can definitely admire where he's coming from because I took a similar path. I personally feel like if you don't really understand sort of pattern making and garment development, but you seek to be a designer, you kind of limit yourself in some ways. So I adore some of the things that I adore most of the stuff that he specifically designed. It has very interesting and innovative solutions to where to put a seam or different things that I feel like you really only would come up with if you understood garment construction. So also he's one of the very few that was from the heart of Rome. I spent a lot of time in Rome, and I personally felt very connected with the things that he was doing at the time because I was living there when he was about to retire and he was making his big documentary, and I was living just behind the Roman ruins when he had this big, huge sort of farewell party, if you will, and could see all of the he did all this stuff in the air, and he had all these big lit columns and stuff, and it was beautiful to be there at the time, go to the museum when he had all of his final pieces several times. And yeah, I love Valentino. It's sad for me that it's no longer Valentino designing, but he's amazing. And yes. I guess, Tom Ford, of course, because he wasn't even planning to be a fashion designer, but he just is amazing. And Zach Posen, I think, because he's just incredibly talented.
Yeah. Those are all excellent choices. And like, what would you think are some of like your biggest fashion design influences, like era, art styles? What influences you in that area?
I generally tend to go more like old Hollywood, sort of like red carpet situation. Art Deco, I think, definitely is something that I gained a lot of influence from even before the whole Gatsby and the Roaring 20s thing kind of came back as a trend. It's always been a huge influence for me. When I was a little girl, I used to dress up like a flapper girl, and I do a lot of beaded fringe stuff. I have this flapper skirt and all these things, and I think it definitely plays out in my designs. But yeah, I would say just sort of old classic Hollywood, things like, and also flowers. I ended up designing a lot of flowers on these wedding gowns, or even on the back of the denim jackets and whatnot. I'm like sort of inventing flowers. I have to, sometimes I reach out to my gardening friends to ask them to show them the design and say, so what should I call this? Because I don't even think this is a flower, and then they show me some gorgeous flower I've never seen before, and I'm like, yes, that's it.
Very cool. Yeah. It's fun.
Flowers are inspiring for sure.
Yeah. And what about your favorite fashion silhouettes?
Again, more when I'm thinking like silhouettes, I think gowns and red carpet. I think definitely sort of the mermaid silhouette is my favorite, sort of like a high front, low back, thin spaghetti strap with a nice big sweep. I just think it's beautiful. But I feel that silhouettes are very specific to body type, and not everybody feels comfortable in a mermaid silhouette. But right. Personally, my collections are a little bit more beachy and flowy and less sort of like cupcake gown and more drapey and flowy. So I think that's more my my customer.
Yeah, yeah. And they're all beautiful gowns too. So,
Yeah.
and then you love to do upcycling. So what's your favorite of your upcycling products?
Yeah, well, I think that definitely started with the upcycled denim tote bag. So we would take jeans and open up the legs and then place them in a way that it looked cool. I did a lot of research on it, and I found that a lot of people were doing things that were kind of like very loving hands at home and very kitsch. And I really wanted to make it slick and sort of seamless and something that people really would want to wear that doesn't feel like, you know, their Aunt Martha made it for them or something like that. No offense to Aunt Martha. Um, but yeah, that's been a huge success, and it's really fun because, you know, it's in all the different washes and there's like a rainbow of availability. We're starting now to use some that even have prints and stuff. Like there's this one that looks like it's a Hawaiian shirt, but it was actually a pair of white jeans with all these bright flowers on them. So anyway,
That's
it's been
fun.
fun. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
been fun. I love being able to, denim is so durable, so I just
Yeah.
feel like it needs a second time around for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you were a kid, what did you think you wanted to do when you grew up?
Um, I really wanted to be a marine biologist. I definitely have a whole other side of me that is more of an environmentalist and very into nature and the ocean and stuff. And I tried to do that, but it was very difficult.
Yeah.
But it's still clearly a huge passion of mine. But yeah, I think I definitely wanted to be a marine biologist. But I can't say that I didn't see little inflections of art in my childhood that made me want to grow up and do something. I think I was always too scared to believe that I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was a child, because it's sort of like, well, what are you going to do with that? And no, you should be a doctor or something like that. So, but I think back to different things that really, like my mother worked very closely with this wonderful costume designer, Greg York, and he would just, the way he would just effortlessly sketch out some silhouette was just like, it was like watching magic. I loved watching him work. It was just so, it was no big deal. And so I definitely would go home and like try to draw little silhouettes and stuff like that. I don't really think that I took it too seriously, but it was 100% passion, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so growing up, do you have any, aside of, your mom's costume, that specific designer, do you have like specific other instances of like vivid childhood memories around art, and like how do you think those experiences kind of influenced you on this creative journey of yours?
Great question. I specifically, of course, I think of my elementary art teacher, Mrs. Allison, and she was amazing. She to this day is still like one of my favorite teachers, hands down. She just had really innovative art projects that were really projects, and it was exciting to like embark on a project. And I feel like definitely in my career and in my designing, I come at it with that same energy. Like, this is a project here. Let's set up all of the pieces and embark on this fun, you know, escapade or whatever. So I think she definitely influenced me a lot. I knew as
Yeah.
a child because of her that I wanted to be an artist. I don't know that I knew exactly how or why, but yeah, things like that I think specifically influenced me artistically.
Yeah.
Um, if I could think of another thing, I mean, I think, you know, my dad was a makeup artist, and so I constantly watched him sort of transform men and women into either the very best version of themselves so they felt they could get into character and go and take on the world, or, you know, a villain or something that they really needed to be in character. And I always admired that. I always loved watching this artistic transformation that then instilled confidence in people. And I do believe that my work is similar in that, you know, I've designed something that then sort of transforms somebody into being that confident person that they feel, you know, beautiful and positive and ready to take on the world in their own skin. So I think that definitely was inspirational as well in its own way.
Yeah. And then with your dad being a makeup artist, like, how do you think, like, were your parents both supportive of you going into the arts and on your artistic journey?
Hi, guys.
Hi. Aw.
Okay. Yeah, I think, okay, no, honey. Okay. Were they supportive of my going on an artistic journey? Well, I think yes and no. I mean, I think parents are always apprehensive to hear that you want to be an artist. You know, it's sort of just like, well, what are you going to do with that? Only because, you know, it's risky. But at the same time, you know, both my mother, father, and stepfather all followed their passions, and they were fortunately very successful with them. And so I think for me specifically, it was no question to just sort of follow my gut. And it was various things, you know. I thought I wanted to be a philosopher at one point. I mean, I was like all over the place until I think junior year of college. But I personally felt comfortable exploring because I think they sort of allowed me to feel like I would just eventually then find what that is. Like I said, I tried to be a marine biologist for the first couple of years of college, and that didn't. It just proved too difficult. I wish that I could have done it, but I couldn't have. And so, yeah, I think that once I fell into what I really wanted to do, which was after I studied abroad for a year in Milan, then they really began to understand and see the path. You know, I mean, it was an unclear path to me as well. So I think we were all a little nervous.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I think they were definitely supportive.
With your marine biologist into art transition, where did you go to school? And then what was eventually your major, and like kind of what influenced you on switching paths, basically?
Yeah. Okay, great question. So I went to UC Berkeley, and the reason that I loved the classes I took, molecular cell biology and all these different things. Like, I was really into it. It was all graded on a curve though, so I definitely felt like if I got one answer wrong, but everybody else got 100%, then I just didn't make the cut, you know? So I was disappointed to realize that I wasn't going to do that, but it was a year abroad in Milan my junior year. I studied at an art academy in the Brera Arts District, which was right in the heart of, like, you know, the Duomo. It's just behind the Duomo, where there are like all of the big fashion houses, basically, like Armani's headquarters and all these things are there. And my roommates were going to a fashion school, and I thought I was just there to study costume design, to be honest, because I actually always loved costume. I wanted to do theater. I thought maybe I wanted to go to New York. And then pre-COVID, there was actually a recession like 10 years prior.
Right.
And
a while back.
And that hindered me from doing that. But yeah, when my roommates would come home with these sketches and with these patterns that they'd created, I was just so into it. I would look at this stuff and I'd be like, well, that's what I want to do for sure. And they were going to a school called Marangoni, which was like the fashion school in Milan. And I didn't really enjoy Milan. I loved it, but there were aspects of it that I loved. I loved the aperitivo. I loved the sort of business fashion world. But it was a bit too northern Italy for me. I think it was a little bit more Germanic and not as like sort of romantic, bella, you know, all the clothes hung out on the window. But I know that sounds silly, but it didn't have the same feeling, I think, that I had expected getting from Italy. And then there were a bunch of different mix-ups. I was supposed to jump over to Rome to work on a miniseries I think that ABC was doing called Empire, but then the set got burned down, And then my good friend Alex Hudson was working on the HBO miniseries Rome that was going to be at Cinecittà in Rome. And so he was able to get me an internship basically in the costume department there. And it just totally blew my mind.
That's amazing.
I had to withdraw from Berkeley for the semester. My parents almost killed me because I only had a semester left. But that experience was second to none. I mean, that was just absolutely incredible to be working with all the different facets of, I don't know if anybody has seen the show, but it's on a set that basically is like certifiably ancient Rome, but on a smaller scale. And, when you have sort of costume department, that means then, dye department, leather department, you got to dress all the extras to look like they're, warriors. And it just was so cool. It was really exciting for me to get to know all of these. I mean, the artisans that work at Cinecittà have really generationally, their family has kind of stayed there within that sector of whatever the specific niches that they work in for generations. And so just getting to know these people, sharing music with these people, it was so exciting. And then of course it was very eye-opening to understand all of what goes into everything. And I find that in developing product in fashion, it's very similar as well. I mean, I specifically work with fashion that's more high fashion. And what I mean by that is that it's not fast fashion, and that there is more detail and care into the materials and the end product. So you do work with, dye artists or hand embroiderers or people that are really, it's an artisan thing that's kind of like a lost art at this point, which I think is really what brought me to Italy to study instead of America, because traditionally things are a little bit more cookie cutter in this country when it comes to fashion, and in France and Italy it's obviously much more couture. So I think I just really wanted to learn all of that from these amazing people that literally had been living in this generationally. It was really very cool.
And then having studied art and fashion in school, do you have any like memorable like projects from school that kind of helped you push you in where you ended up going?
Sure. So I ended up majoring in fine arts and minoring in business and accidentally minoring in Italian because I guess the credits I took in Italy fulfilled the requirement. But so with that art major, we did wild stuff, man. I took like a welding class and like welded this Italian sandal and like painted it. Like, I guess there's a chemical reaction with copper that if you pee on it, it turns green, but I did not pee on it. Use the chemical compounds to paint on it so there could be a green accent on my Italian welded sandal. That was definitely wild. I did an eyeball. We had to choose a part of the body and we were gonna make it out of metal. And when you work in like a metal shop, you have to know the exact degree to which you want to bend that metal before you even cut the sheet. You have to. Right. So they required us to do it first in like a card stock and then build up to it. We didn't end up actually making the body parts in metal because it was just too elaborate. But of course I chose an eyeball. And I like literally made this ball that was like similar to an orange, and then it had like a casing, and then it had lashes, and it was very three-dimensional and wild, and I loved it. I think I really enjoyed that kind of challenge. And then at one point we had like chainsaws and grinders, and we were each given a stump of wood, and we had to like carve our face out of it. I mean, just crazy stuff that you never think like, oh, I'm going to use like a grinder and make a self-portrait, So I love those kinds of projects because it really gets you to think outside of the box. And I think I haven't put myself inside the box since.
That's good. I love the experimental use of different tools too. I think you can learn so much from doing something you've never done before. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
And then you went, so after finishing at Berkeley, then you went back to school in Italy. And then, so where did you go from after, when you finished school in Italy? Like where did your path go after that?
So I did the miniseries in Rome, went back for the semester and graduated at Cal. And then I moved back to, well, actually, so that spring break, I saved up all my money and got myself a ticket to go to Italy so that I could work on getting a visa and figuring out which school I wanted to go to for graduate school. So I ended up choosing the one, Coefia Academy, which is incredible. I loved it. And then I went there for 3 years. The third year was like an extra program of sort of like product development and marketing and, you know, understanding basically how to run your own business. The first 2 years were more pattern making and design based and garment construction. So I think that was really important for me, was to actually learn garment construction in a city like Italy or in a city like Rome. And like I had mentioned before, like a country like Italy or a country like France, where it really was the sort of the foundation of these countries. So that was very important for me. There was a time in my life when I was just, you know, hand making gowns and hand making all these different things and learning how to make all these patterns. And I just was so excited about it all. Like I could tell that it was really for me. And my very best friend, Roberto Di Stefano, he attended this school with me, and he's a very successful handbag designer right now. He has his own line. He was working for Cavalli, and I mean, he's just incredible. But it's very interesting that we had a very different experience. Like, he loved design and he loved sketching, but he absolutely hated the pattern making and the garment construction aspect of it. But in his career now, what he does is, you know, more catered to his interests, and especially with handbag design, you know, these are things that you don't necessarily need to be doing all sorts of garment construction to understand the vision.
Yeah,
whereas
you don't have to drape something on a person,
right,
with a handbag. It's a lot more product than like
exactly
apparel.
like prototypes that are more. And I loved, like you said, draping the specific folds of the patterns and cleaning up a pattern on the table. In fact, some of my favorite pattern makers that I work with here in Los Angeles, I've developed really good friendships with, because we're very similar in that we're a little bit anal. We love to clean up the pattern perfectly, you know, those straight lines, get the curve just right. These kinds of details somehow really fascinate and excite me. So I loved that. And then after the 3-year program, I ended up, surprise, I stayed in Italy for several years. And I think that my mother is very glad that I'm back now. I ended up living in Italy for about 8 years. And yeah, I stayed because I felt like a lot of my peers were maybe studying abroad and then they'd come back, and I just wanted the extra experience for my resume, but also for myself to continue working in that space. And so my first job outside of graduating the graduate school was working at a custom wedding gown atelier, which is ironic because I never thought I'd have my own wedding line.
Nice.
But yeah,
it gave you a good foundation.
Exactly. Well, what was really interesting, I feel like that was school part 3, because some of the little old ladies that were working in the back of that atelier taught me so much, and it was such a pleasure and honor to work with these people. Specifically, I remember this one woman, Franca. She was in her 80s for sure, and definitely was retired, and like, but she just couldn't sit at home alone. She had to work, you know. I mean, it was really funny, you know, all these old ladies just sort of talking in the back, and you know, you just hear them. They're so lively, and this is their life. They can't sit still. They have to create, and
right.
And there's something about that I do feel is a dying art. You know, everything is not exactly sewn by hand anymore, and I found that my peers at that academy were also not really so interested in that. There were a select bunch of us that were, and so unfortunately, it is a dying art. But I'm very grateful to have learned what I did, where I did, when I did. In fact, Franca has since passed on, rest her soul.
Yeah.
But everyone in that atelier, Glenn Sposa, they're amazing. I love them.
That's
But
awesome.
then, yeah, the owner of it, her name is Paula. She used to make the patterns herself up in this little attic at the top, and the atelier had been in her family for generations. And there's something that's just so beautiful about that to me. So
Yeah,
I'm glad to
that's
be
an
a part of
amazing
it.
experience. Yeah.
And then
And
I
then
continued to work. Sorry, I'm
that's
just
okay. Go ahead.
talking
No.
houses. That I at one point then I just started doing private samples, like samples for private clients in my little tiny apartment with no heater.
Oh wow.
I remember like being in jackets like this, getting it done. But I loved it. I loved
Yeah.
it so much. And I actually would work at different restaurants to sort of tide over the bills, because obviously the costume houses and ateliers weren't really getting it done too much. But I loved it. So I adored my life there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then, so what brought you back to the States then?
What brought me back was the idea of having this child. I think that I didn't really feel safe and comfortable to do that whole thing in Italy. Just the hospitals and also the school system. I mean, as you can tell from this interview, education has been something that I esteem, and that, you know, whether my son chooses to go to college or not, I would love him to be able to have the opportunity to go to these great schools. And in Italy, it's kind of not exactly expected to go to college or necessarily graduate school or anything. And I'm not saying that that's necessary, but I wanted him to be able to be in an environment where he could have that choice and have it be something that was possible for him in that way. And also very cool to be sort of back and forth and be able to, I mean, he's still very connected with his family in Italy and everything. So that's great.
Yeah, that's great.
It's an excuse to
what?
The lifetime excuse to go back.
Exactly. Like you have to go back, right?
Yeah.
So then now when you came over here, like we worked together for a little bit after you moved. And then from there, like from coming back here, like how did your career progress here to where you are kind of now?
Right. Gosh, we were only halfway through.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, so it was just over 10 years that I came back. I think it's actually maybe 11. And when I first came back, I was looking for a job specifically to do basically product management and product development for different fashion brands. And I just couldn't find anything. And in fact, through our mutual friend, then I was able to work with you, I think, for the summer. It was just a few months, right?
Yeah.
But because you do textile design, and it was beautiful to be, I mean, again, it was just another opportunity for me to learn a different kind of designing. It really strengthened my Photoshop skills for sure. I thought I knew Photoshop, but then when I worked for a textile designer, it got very detailed. So
my level of Photoshop is a lot like extreme Photoshop.
You're like a Photoshop wizard for sure. So yeah, working with you and Stacey, it was a great environment. You guys were super cool and mellow, and I loved it. And so yeah, I just continued searching for this opportunity, posting my resume everywhere, and I just couldn't find anything. And so I know this sounds wild, but I decided to open up a shoe store on the Venice Beach Boardwalk, because
why not?
Try to do that, I think, when they can't find a job. No, it was Piero, sweetheart. Okay. Yeah, it was a huge risk, but I think that it taught me a lot to be my own buyer and to understand how to really run a shop and all those kinds of things. And then towards the tail end of my first year, I got a call from somebody that had found one of my resumes online and was like, I must have you. I have this line, and it's very European, and it's very detailed, it's very this and that and that, and you're the person for it. You are going to be my girl. And
that's awesome.
I remember thinking, like, I told her, I said, that's so wonderful, but I have a store now, and I think I was planning on staying another year. And she said, you have one more month left on your lease. I will pay somebody to be in that store full time to finish out your lease if you come work with me tomorrow.
Huh.
So I did, because it was totally what I had really wanted, actually.
Right.
And so I worked for her for several years, actually. And it was the beginning of the business that I have since offered to other clients, of doing product development and small production for them. And in the beginning, I was working out of my car for a couple of years, actually, just going back and forth downtown. She lived in Malibu. I was in Studio City. I was going to downtown and trying to just get to know all of the different contractors that I would end up forming these relationships with, and some not. And it was really, talk about a labor of love and just sort of passion. I mean, I was absolutely running the entire show, and it was everything that I wanted. And being able to design with somebody who had a very specific vision, but then also would sort of like say, well, okay, you do some designs too, and then I'll sort of pick and choose. And then eventually ended up getting, actually this space is in the same building as another space that I had way back in the day. And it was just sort of the beginning of everything. And then since then, I've developed which is Yeaggy Corporation, is the company that does product development, small production, but sort of what I like to say, it's like everything under the umbrella, sort of like each client is different. So some people come to me with all of their designs ready to go and they're ready to develop. Other people, have a Pinterest board and then I end up doing sketches for them, or some people, are ready to go to production, or everybody's different. So I feel like when you're a designer, there are a lot of different things that you have to think about that you don't necessarily know that you need to think about. Like hang tags and, the size labels, or all these different little things. Even just like having a seller's permit, stuff like that. Right. So I try to just be able to hold their hand through the whole process and get her done. Make beautiful stuff in the meantime.
That is so great. And then, so when did you start experimenting with like the upcycling that you started doing?
The upcycling is more of a recent thing as a passion of mine. That definitely was, I'm a big environmentalist, and I think that, fast fashion really being the main culprit of essentially fashion being the second polluter in the world next to oil. We're just constantly throwing everything away. Ulu. So the upcycling was really, once I had some time to start working for myself and not focus so much on my clients, I found that was something that I wanted to do more. Because my clients are more about like, let's just make all of the money. And I don't know. I'm constantly thinking about the end result of the product.
Right.
Live forever.
And how did you transition also from like doing the client work to then doing your own wedding line? Like, what was the process of that?
Right. I mean, you would think that I wanted to do this from day one, but actually that's not what happened. So I had a client, I actually had several clients that wanted to do some hand beading on their development or production. So I was working with a bunch of different contractors in India specifically, because they do a beautiful hand. I mean, talking about like the artisan and sort of the historical generational element of these different things. I mean, India has rich culture in detailed embroidery and gorgeous design. So working with different people in India, there was this one contractor that actually approached me that said, high fashion isn't really paying the bills. Couture is kind of like not making as much money as it used to. And we think that it would be lucrative to have a bridal line, but we need the talent. And we love working with you because your designs are so precise and there's hardly any development back and forth. And so we could do a licensing agreement where essentially it would be your brand and your designs and your everything. And we'll just make the samples and then we'll go in on it 50-50. So we ended up doing that, and we did, and I was just thinking about getting pregnant. So I was like, this could be a good idea. Also because everything that I do is in person and it's here physically, with a fit model and all these kinds of things. So the idea of doing something where it was just sort of shipping back and forth and I could communicate very precisely with my designs sounded good for a new mom. So, so we did that. We did the couture, the Not Couture trade show in New York. And I was able to get some orders. He did this also with another brand that was actually his designs and his stuff. And that didn't do as well. So he ended up pulling out, and then I just bought him out. And it was incredible to, I mean, for me, it was amazing to then suddenly walk into my own bridal line and have these beautiful samples and have had the opportunity to sort of learn what wasn't working for him, so that then I could kind of take it and run. So, so yeah, then since then I have done what I believe to be the greatest bridal show, which is in Chicago. It's the National Bridal Market Chicago. And the reason I feel that way is because in New York, although a wonderful place for trade shows, there are just so many of them, and they're kind of all over the place. So as a buyer, you have to like kind of take a cab from one place to the next, and then you go upstairs, and it's just like, if you're not on the first floor, or if you're at the end of the aisle, like you're just going to get overlooked. And in Chicago, it's all in just one beautiful convention center. It's just one big floor. And I've consistently been able to have the same spot, which is right by the window. I have my own window, and I'm like right next to Marquesa, and it's very exciting. But I just feel like everybody can just sort of take the whole, you see everything, and you're not in a panic. So it's just a better environment, I think, for selling. So yeah, that's how the bridal line came to be. And I still cater to my clients. I still have my handful of clients that I work with. I definitely slowed down when I had the child, but now I'm back, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And then now we all know that the wedding industry has been particularly hit hard by the pandemic. So how did that affect your business? And then how did it propel you forward with the newer projects that you're working on?
Okay. Yeah, I think the wedding industry definitely took a snooze this year. And,
big nap.
My very good photographer friend, Jeremy Frazier, who does gorgeous wedding photography, he had 54 weddings booked for 2020, and all of them were pushed. I think actually 52 of them were pushed. Yeah. And he's just only been called in for, quick elopements throughout the year. So everybody's business kind of had to transform. Yeah. And so I had actually been doing these hand-beaded denim jackets for the bride just before COVID. And they were definitely gaining, attraction, interest. People were talking about them. And I got myself a rep to distribute them as fashion items in fashion boutiques. So that was very lucky that happened just before COVID, because that really was what was paying the bills throughout COVID, and really was the only thing that I was getting orders on, because bridal industry was sort of at a standstill. So that really took off, and then I just continued to develop only more styles for the denim, and just sort of put development for bridal on hold for a little bit, because obviously the denim was working. So the denim has really, it's transformed into this whole thing that I didn't anticipate. It's sort of this trending thing right now where people are sort of getting glue guns and patches and putting wifey on the back of their jacket and stuff like that. But I'm proud to say I'm the only one in the industry that is doing them hand beaded. All of the others are patches or something like that. And obviously I think there's a reason. I think it's the price point. It right. costs a lot to hand bead the back of a denim jacket. But for those specific clients that are interested in that, it's something that they can't not have. Right. I've actually heard of it be talked of as, this jacket is my new best friend, or people come into the store, they get the jacket, they get so many compliments on it, and they're feeling so good about themselves with this jacket, then they have to go in next week and see if there's another different cool jacket that they can get newer, better compliments on. So that's been really interesting, that it's actually taken off more as a fashion item than as a bridal item. But at the same time, Kleinfeld Bridal has them, and that's a huge honor for me that they see the potential in this vision. It started with just a beautiful calligraphy of hand beading saying bride on the back, and then they just sort of picked up a whole bunch of other different styles, And now I have like beaded fringe for the cowboy bride, and the white denim is coming out this season, which is very exciting. So
how did Kleinfelds approach you? Like, do they usually find you at the markets, or do they find you through social media, or what's like the connection?
No.
Oh,
no.
We have a new videographer on staff.
Oh, that's what happened when you try to do everything yourself. You know, you have
Right.
to just hire in family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kleinfeld actually came by my booth in Chicago, and they were kind of coming in really quickly. They took a lot of interest in these jackets, and I just sort of was like, hey, could I get a card? Because I wasn't really sure who they were. I'm not looking for that, but thank you, Fiero.
I have it.
Okay.
So it's mine.
So I kind of stopped them real quick and grabbed their card, and I couldn't believe that it was actually Kleinfeld. And when I followed up, I remember feeling nervous, like, oh, are they just trying to like steal my idea? Or, you know, I mean, this is Kleinfeld. But I followed up, and they invited me to come have a meeting with them. I flew out to New York, and I showed them all my samples, and they were so excited. They really loved the line. So
yeah,
it's very exciting. I have a really beautiful relationship with them now, and
yeah,
it's an honor to be in a store like Kleinfeld for sure.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And then, like, so what inspires you with your collections? Like, and how do you use those influences also in developing your personal design style and focus?
Okay. I think go sit down, honey. Go back to your foods. Could you repeat the question? Fiero, I need you to stop yelling, please. Thank you. What inspires my design?
Yeah, what inspires the collections? You touched a little bit about it in your, you know, in the beginning.
In inventing flowers. I think specifically for the bridal, and then also, right, we didn't touch on how, because the bridal industry was at a
the leisure wear. We didn't get into your leisure wear.
Right. I know. I just was so excited about the jackets.
The jackets are very exciting. Yes. Yes. Tell us about the leisure wear.
So essentially, a lot of the fashion boutiques that had the jackets were then asking if I had anything to pair them with. And I was actually trying to convince some of these bridal boutiques that they could maybe buy some of my bridal belts, but make them in black or something and make them like kind of funky. And so I showed some of the images of the belts on this white slip dress that I have, which is really just to style the belts. And they were like, wow, so how much for the dress?
That's mine.
Okay, honey, please go sit down. Thank you. So then suddenly the slip dress became an item, and now based on that, I actually created a capsule collection of luxury leisure wear of just, so I think it's like 5 or 6 styles of just a couple dresses, camisoles, relaxed pants, and everything is in sand-washed silks and sand-washed linen. So it's really easy breezy, and the reason that, of course, I was reminded about this is because the design inspiration is really coming from the beach. I'm like really inspired by the beaches of Italy, the beaches of California. You know, I'm a California girl who spent several years in Italy, and the beaches were just like the best part of it. So the idea of sort of, you know, just barefoot or flip-flops or your messy bun, no makeup, and just sort of walking down the beach in your favorite dress and feeling the breeze, that's definitely been a big inspiration. And I think also for bridal as well. I think that I've done some bridal shoots on the beach, and I think there's just an energy of that sort of effortlessly chic, that sort of sprezzatura, and where you feel comfortable and breezy. So I think definitely the bridal line, a lot of the silhouettes, you could definitely see that it's something that you could wear for a beach elopement or a beach wedding, or that would transition from your ceremony to
Mom,
the beach.
it's sofa.
I just wanted to mention too, I think we are probably going to run out of a little bit of time during this interview, that we're going to go on to Clubhouse at 1 after this for like a more of a Q&A and discussion. So if you want to join us over there in a little bit, the link is in my bio for that, as well as I think Alexandra put the link in her bio as well. And then, so with doing the upcycling and, you know, the shift into leisure wear, you also have another facet on your plate, and, you know, got involved with the Save the Earth Foundation and with your environmentalist, you know, goals. Can you talk a little bit about like how that affects your process and it influences you as a fashion designer?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so I grew up with the founder of Save the Earth Foundation as like an uncle to me. He's my stepfather's best friend, and he definitely lived in our house in the guest room for like a decade. And he influenced me like an uncle, you know, my whole little childhood. And he and I were the ones that linked in the family in terms of like environmentalism. And I was constantly doing little projects about Save the Earth, and it just really opened my eyes to it as like a normal thing. I think, you know, I'm 38, but there are some people that, you know, in this younger generation, that this is just normal to consider environmentalism. But I feel like at the time it was maybe like not so much like that. But yeah, he eventually, when it was time for him to retire, he approached me and just said, you know, Alex, it's always been you. It was like a very Ross and Rachel moment, and it was very sweet, where it was very clear that we were the ones that connected most, I think, on various facets of his brand and the environmentalism I think that he was trying to push. Save the Earth is most about creating an awareness, and I think that's why, you know, influencers like Greta Thunberg or different people that are really just trying to make people aware of what's going on, to influence the people to come together to make change together. You know, like Al Gore, for example, has his climate reality leadership program that I'm proud to say that I've participated in, and I have my little pin. But his whole thing is that he just wants to explain what's happening, make people aware so they're not ignorant of exactly what's going down every single day, and allowing them to make a better choice for the different things that they may want to do to help to save the earth. A lot of times it's such an overwhelming problem. It's such a big issue that I think that a lot of people feel that they don't even want to talk about it. You know, that it's just like makes them feel uncomfortable. They feel guilty. And I think that that's the biggest challenge too, is really being able to develop a way to talk about it in a way that is positive and that is not something that's making people feel guilt, but they're making them feel hopeful and influenced and inspired that they can make a difference.
Right.
Specifically with the foundation, it used to be that the money would go towards grants or towards schools to build climate centers for some of the top universities. And it's incredible what's been accomplished with the funds that we were able to get through licensing agreements, you know, back when Neil was running things. Now, from my standpoint, Melanie, from my standpoint, I think it's really important to actually be saving the earth. Not to say that those things weren't, but at this point, I think that we need to use those funds and allocate them towards things that are specifically making a difference in the environment today. And so I've developed these 5 different initiatives that I feel like are kind of the 5 biggest ones that we could actually help with. And to your question, one of them is specifically about microfiber textile pollution, which I think is really, it's a big one. You know, being able to filter plastic fibers from water, you know, for the oceans, and just the idea that we're making such a strong impact so casually in that fast fashion and not considering the blends in the you know, the content of the fabric of the garments that we're consuming and what's happening there. You know, people aren't thinking about it. And you know, I think that it's important, you know, with this luxury leisure wear line, for example, for me, it was very important that it was in pure fibers, so that it's like 100% silk and 100% linen. Because another thing that I think, you know, associated with fashion and environmentalism that I really would like to strive towards is actually implementing fabric recycling systems, ideally globally, but, you know, let's start locally. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. I really believe in linking up with big fashion brands that understand that they're the ones that are making a lot of the pollution. They feel responsible for it. There's this beautiful movement of transparency going on where everybody's sort of demanding that they have a more sustainable product. And so people are finally getting on board with actually doing that. And so, you know, uniting with these brands and creating products that are single fiber materials so that they could actually go into a recycling system so that they can be made anew is, you know, it sounds a little bit woohoo now, but I feel like in 10 years, this is something that that should hopefully be normal.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just about breaking the cycle of consciousness and spreading this awareness and making people understand what's going on. And I feel like that will definitely happen through the brands. And so now licensing agreements for me, it's really important that we're actually making an agreement to work together in a sustainable way. So it's not just about slapping the Save the Earth logo on it and then, hey, I'm part of this green bandwagon and everybody buy my product. I think that it's really important for us to help them, you know, I'm in product development, to help them to develop product that is actually more sustainable in order to merit that Save the Earth stamp on their product, which will then do them good. So there's never been a better time, obviously, to push this. I really commend Neil Parkman for pushing Save the Earth Foundation up this hill from the early 70s. I mean, he obviously, you know, it's all about passion. He had this huge vision and this huge passion. And I can't believe that he pushed that ball uphill as long as he did, with people literally laughing in his face about environmentalism. So it's a beautiful time, and I'm happy to be working with really important brands right now on developing more sustainable products.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great initiative, and it's very aptly timed for Earth Day coming up
Totally.
next. So,
I know.
Yeah.
I know last year was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and we had organized a huge festival, even though I'm not allowed to call it a festival, that was planned to be here in downtown in Grand Park. And it was just going to be just sort of this big event that people could bring their families to and have a really good time, but that everything was catered to. Please stop, Fiero. Like all the vendors and all the people would have sustainable product, or any of the food and stuff like that. Obviously, it was going to all be sustainable. But then also a place where not only music could be heard and people could enjoy these performances where, you know, songs touched on environmentalism, but then that the children could play in different, you know, like put 3D goggles on and be in this like virtual reality in a coral reef, or like, I'm really interested in sort of just all across the board, all the different ways in which you can spread this awareness and intrigue people, whether it be children or old people, and get them thinking, get them excited, get them talking about it, switching it up a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
So unfortunately that was canceled, and it also is not going to be happening this year, but it's set for 2022.
Yay.
So the 52nd anniversary of Earth Day. But yeah, whatever it is, I mean, it's just a really great excuse, if you will, to celebrate the environment and really start talking about different initiatives and spreading awareness.
Yeah, it's so important. And then, you know, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because you have such a beautiful social media account, before we get cut off, is like, how do you go about your social media, like, and your marketing in general? Like, do you work with a photographer? You know, how do you plan out your photo shoots and everything?
Photo shoots. Okay, well, so definitely in the last few months, I've been working with my amazing social media girl, Taylor Hackett Johnson. She's been the one that's allowed me to have a daily post. I definitely tried to do it for a long time just myself, but as a single mom with a million things going on, it was becoming too much. But she's incredibly talented, and she also has another business where she sets up photography shoots for different photographers that want to have content, and then she'll have models and different things, and she's used my product for some things, and it's just been so beautiful.
That's amazing.
As for the vision and the photography and stuff, I mean, for my clients for the past decade, I've been doing, you know, running all of their photo shoots and managing it all down to the wire. And so I think you could say I'm kind of a little bit of a photo shoot guru at this point. And I think that's definitely helped to just sort of, I think it's really important to plan it. You need to scout the location. You need to have a vision, have your vision board, you know, make sure that the sun is in the right place at the certain hours or whatever. Even beach locations, you know, sometimes the tide can change from one day to the next. So you really have to be super planned. I think another thing that's really important is understanding how many looks you're going to shoot that day, setting up a shot list, having estimated rough timing for each so that you really can stay within those limits and within the sunshine if you're doing it outside. And yeah, making sure that you meet your models, that you have a fit model casting, and make sure that you measure them, because not always are they telling you the correct measurements, and making sure that they're able to fit in your stuff properly before you get there the day of and realize, oh, SHIT. So yeah, I think that's been really important. I had been working with my really good friend Jeremy Fraser, who's an amazing photographer. But then at one point I just started taking the pictures myself. Also Isaiah Powers, incredibly talented photographer. He's tagged on almost all of my denim.
It's so good. It's so good.
Okay, honey. You watch something else then.
And that's
But yeah, I started taking the pictures myself, and all the ones in Chicago and all these others. And I think it's just because I have such a strong vision of what it is that I want to see that I've been able to, I guess, be successful at that. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Well, it is 1:02 and we're supposed to go over to Clubhouse for some Q&A and discussion. So if you would like to join us, there is a link in my bio to Clubhouse, the Clubhouse room that we'll be starting. So we hope to see you there. So thank you so much for doing this, Alex, especially with having your son there. I completely understand. He is adorable, by the way. Thank you.
Mom life.
Mom life that's how life is, right? Yeah. So. All right, thank you so much, and we will hopefully see you over on Clubhouse then.
Okay.
Have a good rest of your day.
So
Bye.
it's been great.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you guys for tuning in.